This is Christine Perey. Thank you very much for being with me here today with one of the area members, DigiLens, the leadership of DigiLens here with me today. We're going to be talking about one of the categories of trends that I wrote up in the blog post about 2024 trends. These are the things I'm going to be watching for over the course of the next year. And one of that category we're going to be focusing on is primarily about hardware. And I'm delighted to have with me today Brian Hamilton and Nima Shams. Brian, introduce yourself, and Nima, please follow as soon as Brian's finished.
Great. Thank you, Christine. And thank you to the area for all your support and actually doing a lot of really important work in the AR space. Brian Hamilton, head of marketing and sales for DigiLens, been a pioneer and entrepreneur in the space for almost a decade now. Was a founder of the RealWear company, was involved in some of the first smart helmet products, pre-HoloLens. I have deployed this in healthcare and in over 50 countries around the world. So I'm honored to be here, and special shout out to the area and XR community.
And hello, my name's Nima Shams. I'm the Vice President and GM of DigiLens. I've been in the space since 2010. I used to be one of the executives at a company called ODG, Osterhout Design Group, that invented the bird bath technology that is widely popular now. After ODG, my team and I went to RealWear, where we met Brian and helped develop their roadmap of products. And about 4.5 years ago, we came to DigiLens because of DigiLens' core waveguide technology. And I'm excited to be here and share our knowledge about the space with the area group.
Great, thank you. Well, you've both been in fields that focus on the optical see-through form of augmented reality. I think, to me, that's the only kind of augmented reality there is. That's it's a position that I have, that people need to see the real world. That's what I, not a video of the real world, but the real world itself. Well, with the launch of the Apple Vision Pro and many of the activities and launches of other products that are video pass-through, there's some who have proposed that video pass-through is appropriate for enterprise and industrial use cases. Do you agree with that, or what's your position, Brian? First with you, what do you think about video pass-through in an industrial environment?
Absolutely. So, one firm belief I have is that not one size fits all. There's so many vast use cases in industrial and enterprise. There's a place at the table for monocular, binocular, video pass-through, non-video pass-through, AR, VR, all of the above. There's a lot of space in the world. I want to thank Apple for coming out with the product, because it's really highlighted. And you probably saw Mark Zuckerberg countering Apple Vision Pro in a video just recently. It's really brought a great narrative to the space for people to discuss this important topic.
And they're talking about not just the displays, they're talking about spatial computing. They're introducing a whole new vocabulary into people's narratives.
Absolutely. And so our perspective is this: the Apple Vision Pro and AR pass-through has a great applicability to the desktop kind of approach. If you're doing something in training, or if you're in a controlled environment, you're in a control room or something like that where you need to have lots of monitors, great. But if you're out in the real world, you've got to be able to see the user's eyes. You've got to look at things like eye glow for the transparency and the ability to see correctly and not have the data compromised. So we believe that AR pass-through has its place, but it's in more of a controlled environment. But when you get out in the real world for real world use cases, across industrial, enterprise, military, and government, that true AR is on our doorstep, and that we believe the next evolution is coming quickly. But we also do see a lot of value in the pass-through, but we believe that true AR will eventually win in the enterprise and industrial sector.
See-through video see-through is what Apple Vision Pro proposes, and what we're talking about as having value in the workplace where there's a lot of risks and bright lights and dim lights and all kinds of different qualities, and that's the optical see-through, and using the lenses that you guys have worked on and have a lot of intellectual property in, right?
Yeah, Christine, if I may add to what Brian said, we're canning the term synthetic AR, right? What Apple and Meta are doing isn't true AR. It isn't organic AR. You don't see the world through your eyes. You see it through a camera and a monitor, right? And like Brian said, we see the same analogy we saw in computing. In computing, you have a desktop computer, you have a mobile phone, and you have a pager. Spatial computing is going to follow the same trend, right? What's the advantage of a desktop computer? Extremely powerful, massive field of view, not very mobile, right? Use cases, CAD, entertainment, which is everything that Apple's speaking through. So Apple's product is the spatial computer of the future. On the pager end, it's a monocular device. Think Google Glass, think maybe the Meta Ray-Bans, super sexy, really nice form factor, but not much capability yet. Where DigiLens wants to play is in the center. We call that, the mobile computer of spatial computing, the cell phone of spatial computing. And what's really important in the industrial place where you asked about is spatial awareness. Our default baseline is your reality. It's your eyes. If the device fails for any reason, you see your surroundings, you see that tool, you see that equipment. If the Apple Vision fails or the Meta fails, you're literally blind. And so we think that limits its use case on the shop floor or outdoors or in areas where your spatial awareness and perception is extremely critical. And sometimes, your life is in your hands if you're in an equipment or something that may harm you. So like Brian said, 3 different categories, 3 different use cases. We love Apple started a conversation. Everyone's talking about spatial computing, so that's great for us. But use cases are very dependent on what you're trying to do.
Indeed, indeed. Could not agree with you more. But the use cases and the device that you choose, you may not need the same device for all the use cases and all the environments. And one of the critical elements, I think, to choosing your device is what sensors does it have? What are its capabilities, not as a display, but as a sensory device to acquire your context in real time and then make that useful context. We don't want just context for the sake of more data. We want context so that it informs the information I receive, so that I'm getting the right instructions in the right time, so that if I've missed a step, the system knows it and can compensate or remind me of what I need to do. So can we talk about sensors in the Argo platform and what you see around that? One of the things I love to tell people is when I started in augmented reality in 2006, cell phones didn't even have cameras. They were just devices that you could, there were a few that had cameras. Then they got GPS, and it was so clear that they were going to get many sensors. So now what about our eyewear? They've got cameras, they've got microphones. What else?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So a spatial computer sits between you and your reality, right? And so in many ways, it needs to almost become smarter than the user. It needs to know when to present information at the right time. If you're like driving or have equipment with you that you need to be focused on, you don't want an Android pop-up to get a update to your OS. The system needs to be ambiently aware of what's happening. So Argo, we've packed in a lot of sensors, IMUs, multiple cameras, GNSS radio, so it knows where you're fixed. We've even put a pressure sensor so it can detect the delta and height. So which floor of the building are you in, or how high up are you? Each device has 5 microphones and works in over 90 dB of noise, because voice commands is one way that people interact with a device like this. And so we need to be able to pick up the user's voice, even though they can't hear their own voice. So it's really, really important that a device that sits between you and your reality is aware of when to present the right information to you, right? And so the fundamental, most important aspect, which we talked about, is the waveguide, right? We are not distracting you from reality. You're aware. And the sensors that sit behind that only give you information at the right time.
What
So for
about
example, yeah,
dual
please.
camera? You got two cameras, so that, or how many cameras do you have? Would you have
Yeah.
LiDAR as well? And what is that depth sensing technology we need to have?
Yeah, great question. We're kind of following the Elon Musk idea of not putting LiDAR and using cameras, because this product's meant to work indoors and outdoors, right? So on both ends, we have global shutter cameras that I believe are 170-degree field of view overlap. These are global shutter, these are monochrome, and they are sensitive to IR light. And so what these do is what's referred to as visual odometry. They look at features in your environment, and as you move, they map that environment and put you in space. Slam. In the center, we have a 48 megapixel camera. No one needs 48 megapixels. The reason we put 48 megapixels is because it does 4x4 binning. So if you're in a
Uh-huh.
very bright environment, you get very high resolution. But let's say you walk into a factory and it's dim lit. Those 48 megapixels act like 12 megapixels, but with 4 times the pixel light. So they can detect lower light better. They also have OIS, optical image stabilization, and EIS, electronic stabilization. Because once it's on your head and you're moving around, whoever's seeing through your camera or whatever you're capturing, it's very important for it to see it. So those are the camera sensors we've built. We know one size doesn't fit all, so we've introduced a USB-C and the ability to mount on top a mounting system, different types of sensors. So maybe you do need a time of flight sensor, or
Right.
maybe you need a IR sensor. We've built that capability into the device.
That's really cool. That's very that's thoughtful. Thoughtful, yeah.
One thing on sensors, just to add to Nima, that I think is important is that, sensors are very use case specific. So when you think about the integrations, it's really vertically focused. One of the challenges I think that's happened in the space for why their mass adoption has been slower than we all like is that people are delivering a great piece of software or a great piece of hardware, but they're not thinking about the total solution. And so a sensor package for a government is very different than a sensor package for construction.
Or medical.
Or medic for exactly. So, whether it's being able to capture diagnostic information, or, in medical, or being able to do something where you can identify that patient in real time, or if you're actually out in the field and you need to turn the soldier into a sensor, for example,
Yeah.
based on location. So sensor packages are vast and really need to be looked at on a vertical and geographical kind of approach.
It's perfect, Brian, because that's my third topic for today's fireside chat is the diversity of devices and displays that we should have, but we don't quite have yet today. It seems that people are, thinking in very in boxes. They're thinking of, it's got to be binocular, it's got to sit on my nose, it's got to have a computer on my head. And yet I'm convinced that we need to have much more variation. So are you working with your distributor partners to develop alternatives to the Argo platform and even different modules of Argo?
Right. So, Nima's got a lot more on this in terms of the product roadmap, but let me give you my perspective. We have 3 lines of business within DigiLens. Number one, we train and help others figure out how to manufacture and bring up lines for waveguide manufacturing. Number two, we work with different partners that have their own specifications where they want to use the DigiLens as a component, the waveguide, the projectors, the boards, all that. So there's a lot of diversity in that. And the challenge I think is happening, and then we've got the third line, obviously, as we've turned into a product company. The challenge that I think we see is that everybody's trying to build one purpose-built device that's like the capture device for every single market and every single scenario.
A nightmare.
And then the other challenge is, I think, hardware is hard. Being entrepreneurs like Nima and I, go try to raise money for a hardware company. Good luck. It is super hard. So the innovation is very difficult, especially in the United States, for development of hardware companies. And so we're seeing new trends here now with AI and spatial computing that are maybe changing that. But the reality situation is that diversity of devices is really important. A monocular device like the RealWear HMD can be great for specific use cases, or the new Navigator they have. You need to look at compliance. You need to look at all the different
Exactly.
form factors. How do you fit it? How do you wear it? What's the personal protective equipment, et
And
cetera, et
some
cetera.
people need to wear them all day long, and other people only for a few hours. So much variety.
That's
Absolutely.
right. Yeah. To build on what Brian said, which is really key, is DigiLens is very vertically integrated, right? Even though we're still a startup, we're a startup that's been around for 15 years working on the hardest physical problems, which has been the optics. And so we have the capability of making waveguide technology, making projector technology, and making the boards that are needed to go into that computer. And so Argo is our initial product platform. But like you said, it doesn't necessarily fit everyone's use. So what we've done is around Argo, we've built an ecosystem. We've created the capability to allow for hinge adjustment, for ear horn removal. Some people want to wear it for a very long time, but they don't want it necessarily on their nose, like you mentioned. So we've even come with halo head straps and the ability
Yes,
to take the weight off of the head and even allow
sure,
it to step out of the way, right? And so
exactly.
we're building an ecosystem around Argo. But at the same time, we understand one size doesn't fit all. So we're innovating through iterating. We're working with our partners, figuring out what's the problem they're trying to solve, and then taking all of the core components of that and building unique solution bespoke to their needs. And that's what Brian really touched on, which is key, is it's the solution, right? The hardware is the barrier to entry, the software is the magic, but it's what are you trying to solve and how are you solving that? And so we're uniquely poised to be able to solve different needs for different markets.
That's very, very well said. Very exciting. Well, as you both pointed out, hardware is hard. And I think it's until there's, a more rich ecosystem and people showing success. We really need people to demonstrate success. When a hardware provider goes away, all of their customers get slapped on the hand, and they're told, "Oh, don't ever do that again. That was a waste of money," or whatever. So it's terribly uh, disappointing when you have people or companies that are focusing on one form factor for one use case or for all use cases, because it doesn't work that way. Gentlemen, your ideas are fantastic. Is there anything else we want to summarize, or anything else you want to raise about hardware in 2024? Now we don't want to go out into the end of the decade.
No, maybe I could start and Brian can close. You touched on a really interesting point, is that there have been some false starts in the past. I think the challenge that you see with those false starts were they were all initially coming out as a consumer device that kind
Yes,
of failed and pivoted to become an
exactly.
industrial device. And then they weren't very good because the DNA of the product wasn't industrial, right? Google Glass, first example of it was some guy skydiving, right? Magic Leap, first use case was whales in an auditorium. HoloLens
Exactly.
was Minecraft, right? Those were consumer products that didn't really capture the consumer's interest. So then they quickly had to pivot and claim they were enterprise products. What we're trying to do with DigiLens and Argo is be an enterprise product from the beginning.
Right.
It's mil
By
spec
design.
by design. It's mil spec. It's ANSI. Peripheral vision is not occluded, right? Spatial awareness is key. So by design, we're building it for the enterprise industrial market. And therefore, we hope, and from the traction we're seeing so far, that it is a use tool, right? This is a solid product. Do that with the Apple Vision Pro, right? This is designed to be a enterprise tool to enhance the work of the worker. I don't know, Brian, if you want to add anything to that.
One small thing, I think that the market's actually matured as well. If you take a look back to 2014, 2015, 2016, it was catching a wide net. Everybody was investigating this. They were in POC purgatory because the total solutions weren't fully ready. What I think we're at now is there's a lot of engagement with the big system integrators and partners that are good solutions around this. So I actually see a really bright future for scale coming up for this category. And one thing that you touched on, Christine, I think that's really important is, we need Alka-Seltzer for the space. There's a hangover because of the amount of companies that have come and gone. You've got to look at
Exactly.
who's an investor in the company. Are they going to be around? Does it have a component side of it? What's the cloud strategy? There's a much bigger, deeper conversation for this
Yes.
scale that needs to take place.
Security, privacy, all these ethics. I'm not saying that those are bad topics. I'm saying that the conversations have to go on at all these levels in parallel.
Absolutely. Most entrepreneurs don't want to sit down and start their business around compliance, but that is important. That's probably where you need to start, honestly.
Yeah. Well, great conversation. Thank you so much for spending the time with us during this fireside chat. Thank you for being area members and supporting our community and our activities. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.